Thank you, Senator Adabo and other members of the committee here. My name is Lindsay Slader. I'm the VP of Regulatory Affairs for GeoComply, and GeoComply provides compliance-grade geolocation solutions for online U.S. regulated sports betting and also online lotteries, casino, poker, daily fantasy sports, and advanced deposit horse racing. So at the moment, GeoComply is actively blocking play from New York, like you're seeing here on the live map. Been interesting to see that there are people that have been trying to wager here from the Albany area as we've been speaking.
If I may, can you just explain what we're looking at? Because I've been watching it pretty much all day.
I didn't mean for it to. I closed my computer and I kept going.
I'm not focusing on the panels, but it does catch your eye. So please explain what we're looking at.
Yeah, what normally show as red pins, I think they're kind of like a dark red, blackish color, but see that pin that dropped this area of the world right now? Those are users that are failing right now from New York State, but essentially each pin represents a live geolocation check for online New Jersey sports wagering, but also casino and poker.
You're basically showing the state of New Jersey. Can you enlarge that to show possibly closer to New York and New Jersey?
Absolutely. So, I mean, this live demo that I'm showing you here today is designed to highlight the importance, but also effectiveness of pinpoint geolocation technology. So we enable play right up to the banks of the Hudson River. On the New Jersey side, the ability to pinpoint users with such accuracy means that should a state like New York choose to do online sports wagering, then the state will be able to maximize its player base and accept bets right up to the other side of the banks of the Hudson River and the rest of the state. There's a great article, I think it's in the New York Post, that talks about a guy who rides his bike over the George Washington Bridge across the Hudson River. Just past the halfway point, he pulls out his phone, he places his bet once he's on the New Jersey side of the bridge, and then he rides back home. So I know Mr. Levin from FanDuel had mentioned that a quarter of their online users have New York billing addresses, while GeoComply doesn't see any personal data such as a user's address, or we don't know where they work or live or anything like that. But we do still see the portion of those users that attempt to get on, like the pins that we're seeing fall from New York right now. Out of all the out-of-state attempts to access a New Jersey site, 44% of those transactions originate from New York.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, of all the geolocation checks that we do, the users that are failing because they're not inside New Jersey, they're out of state, 44% of those are from New York. So almost half of the people that are trying to get into New Jersey online are from New York. And those are just the people that have bothered to try anyways. Maybe they're trying to spoof their location.
Right, those are the people who are in New York trying to place a bet from their residence in New York.
Yeah,
and they fail.
Either because they figure it's worth a try or they don't know any better. Maybe they've been marketed to anyways by a New Jersey site. And so when we look at the unique user accounts for across all New Jersey sports books, about 8% of those are coming from New York State. So the way that the geolocation technology actually works, each pin represents an individual check. Typically, the user is located at some point between login and first bet. The purpose of locating them is to ensure and provide sportsbooks with the ability to ensure that every wager that they accept is legal under the Wire Act, under any federal or state law that essentially requires the online betting to happen within the confines of the state. Previously, this was done just with an IP address. In this day and age, we have GPS, Wi-Fi data on our phones that helps us order a coffee from Starbucks or use our Google Maps app. And so we're able to capture that data, but make sure that it hasn't been tampered with. So the majority of the work for a geolocation company is to make sure that no one's tampered with that data, no one's trying to spoof their location, no one's trying to get into New Jersey, when in fact they're in New York. And so we're hired by casino operators, sportsbook platforms, to carry out those checks on their behalf and ensure that all of the bets that they're accepting are in fact legal. The nature of capturing all this data about a user's device, where they are, also lends itself greatly to helping police authorities prosecute financial crimes. So when it comes to investigating identity theft, payment fraud, we're able to help authorities and state regulators match their location data, the devices that they were using to carry out these crimes, and prosecute utilizing that data. When you think about the users that travel across the Hudson River or across any area along the borders of New Jersey, particularly those that border New York, lots of people are going to work, school, back and forth. The idea behind the location checks is that they become more frequent as you approach the border, so by the time you reach the state line, you've been cut off from wagering. So that concludes my demo. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
I guess I just
Senator
have
Jordan.
a question, only because I was watching there, and so I saw 2 points fall on the New York side.
Mm-hmm.
One stayed there and one disappeared. So the one that stayed, was that someone from perhaps New Jersey that was in New York that was able to bet, and the one that disappeared was one that's not supposed to be betting?
Every pin just represents a moment in time check, and they stay up on the screen for X number of seconds. I think the ones that are failing, so for example, in New York, they're designed to stay up a little bit longer so that you can see them and understand where they're coming from. But if you can see the colors, the blue pins represent PC and Mac users, white represent iPhone, iPad users, and green are Android phones and tablets. As many before me here have attested to, about 80% of sports betting in New Jersey comes from online, from mobile. In the state of New Jersey, 80% of all traffic comes from within 10 miles of the border, and almost half comes from within 2 miles. The data that we look at, and we can use daily fantasy sports data as a comparison. In New York State, it's almost identical. So just over 80% of anticipated player base would be within 10 miles of the border, and a very significant portion from just a mile or 2. So having the right geolocation in place to make sure that you can indeed pinpoint that those people are where they're supposed to be, that you can capture them and say, yes, you're in New York, you're eligible to play online with a New York sports book, would ensure that every bet can be processed that legally should be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jordan. So to your point, Ms. Slader, when looking at the border of New Jersey, and given the numbers that you had mentioned, you can actually pretty much see that there is a possibility, a strong possibility, that residents from New York are taking a bridge or tunnel, going to New Jersey, placing the bet, and coming out based on your 5 or 10 mile radius to the border properties adjacent to New York City, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Interesting.
Just the nature of where people live, work, they're traveling back and forth. It simply dictates what time of day they can bet if they're traveling between
Sure.
New Jersey and New York.
And you compile all that data as far as the timing of the bet and obviously the location, correct?
We don't actually see any betting data at all, or how much people are betting, but,
No,
the
but
location checks that happen during their wagering
Location,
session.
time of day? When
Yeah,
the bet is
the
placed,
exact
right?
time of the
Okay.
check, yes, so everything's recorded.
Just getting back to the previous panel, again, FanDuel mentioned 25%. I know you can't confirm that number, but you would think that number is kind of accurate based on your, maybe even higher, but based on your data, you can see possibly that 25% of New York residents are going to Jersey, placing a bet, coming back.
It's
That
hard-
Jersey makes 25%?
It's hard to say because we don't know who these players are. We don't know their names. We don't know where they live. I think FanDuel had mentioned that it was based on people's registered addresses. So there's plenty of people, I'm sure, that live in New York that are traveling over to New Jersey, but they've just never tried to get in from New York, and therefore we would never see that attempt from New York in our data.
To the panel here, so much has changed in terms of technology over the past 5 years, just a short period of really about 5 years. So much technology has changed. the idea of geofencing in our state becomes an integral issue as we talk about going forward. Can you talk about geofencing to an extent and the changes you have seen technology-wise over the past 5 years?
Yeah. So I would say that there's definitely a learning curve for the user. So I don't think any online operator in the world has seen geolocation requirements as robust as someplace like New Jersey or Nevada or Delaware. So for the user who maybe is used to providing personal information and going through the deposit process, they've already gone through multiple friction points after they registered their account. By the time they get to be geolocated, they have to be educated on, turn on your GPS signal, turn on Wi-Fi. You need to do these things because of the legal requirement to be in state in order to proceed. And so when New Jersey came online in 2013, no users had ever done this before. They didn't need to be subjected to all these technical requirements. So there were users that had to figure that out. And now that they have, the majority, I'd say, 97 to 99.5% of users are able to play. They're in state. They have no problem being located. And while there could be a learning curve, the same in New York over time, users will come to understand how it works. From a technical perspective, someone is always going to make a spoofing app today or tomorrow that didn't exist before. So the technical challenges of making sure that no one circumvents the checks to ensure that someone is in state is a never-ending process that GeoComply's staff is almost entirely committed to doing. So discovering the latest spoofing risk is a never-ending challenge.
We mentioned a lot in previous panels, almost every panel, about the issue of gaming addiction. And the problems of excessive or compulsive gaming or gambling. With the data that you have, that you work with, can you identify, and if you can identify a situation of an individual who has a gaming addiction, what process do you do to try to address it? Or do you inherently have any measures? You may not, but if you do, what measures do you have to address the gaming addiction? Yeah, please.
As I mentioned previously, a geolocation provider likely will not have any personal data. Right. They won't know who's betting. Right. Once a user has been identified by an operator, either having been self-excluded or identified in some way as having a problem, additional measures could be taken from the geolocation technology side to help ensure that they are still blocked from accessing wagering activity. So for example, someone self-excludes, they put their name on a list, therefore they're unable to hold an account online. They have a change of heart, vulnerable moment, they use maybe their spouse's account, maybe they're using the same home computer. We can look at data from when they were gaming, if they were previously betting at some point before they self-excluded, and block all the devices that were ever associated with their wagering activity, any user accounts that were associated with those devices, even individual Wi-Fi routers that may be within the vicinity of where they were playing, or the area itself could be blocked. So even if you do manage to use an account to log in, likely violating the terms of that account if it's not yours, you would ultimately meet that final roadblock when you're geolocated, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Yep. Thank you.